Joining us now to talk more is Texas Republican Congressman Pete Sessions. Nice to see you. Thanks for being with us and spending the a couple days after the holiday, and you're here with us. Thank you.
I'm still in the holidays, and we're still praying for Donald Trump. What a leader we have in the United States.
Well, let's talk about this. Trump has said he wouldn't meet with Zelensky till he was ready to inch closer to a peace deal. So could we be on the cusp here?
Well, I think we are. I think that I'm really proud of both of them for overcoming some earlier missteps, perhaps with each other. And what we're looking at now is where President Zelensky has come back and taken what might have been a 26-point plan and taken it to a 20-point plan. It is his rebuttal to the president about the things that he think would work also. And as we've always learned, I guess we could jam things down on the table and try and pound our fist. But if they work for both countries, the United States and for Ukraine, and I will say Europe, then that's the starting point. Then we're going to find out where Mr. Putin is. And he has not lived up to a darn thing he's ever done.
No, especially with these fresh attacks that we've just had from him overnight. And he's a butcher and he's a bully, and we don't want to be rewarding him. There has been some criticism from supporters of Ukraine arguing that the United States is prioritizing Russia's requests too much. Let's listen to Secretary of State Marco Rubio refute this.
This whole narrative that we're trying to force something on Ukraine is silly. We can't force it. There's no peace deal that Ukraine. There is no peace deal unless Ukraine agrees to it. But there's also no peace deal unless Russia agrees to it. We are just trying to find whether there's common ground that we can make happen. And maybe that's not possible. Maybe it is.
Everybody watching right now just wants it all to end, this meat grinder to end. So do you think it's possible, though, for a deal to be brokered that wouldn't make Russia more powerful than it already is?
Well, of course, because Ukraine wouldn't agree to that. But the bottom line to this whole thing is it is important for the world to see how Mr. Putin will negotiate this, because Europe is very nervous. The United States needs to take into account the understanding about why we've got to be behind a deal that's brokered and works. And it does take brokering. It does take people on both sides negotiating and trying to get closer. But the problem that we've got to make sure of is that when President Trump is no longer in office, that we still have a deal.
Okay. Well, look, I'd like to turn our attention to even more foreign policy that's on the president's agenda this week. We've got, of course, the military buildup in Venezuela targeting alleged narco-terrorists and more strikes potentially happening there. Trump is also meeting with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on Monday on implementing the second phase of the administration's peace plans for Gaza. Earlier this week, the United States launched those airstrikes against ISIS in Nigeria for persecuting Christians in the region. But here's the question. Do you worry, as the Democrats are talking affordability, that people may feel like the president is prioritizing foreign policy over focusing on issues here at home?
Well, it certainly would lend itself to a good debate and an argument. But I think that what the president's doing is laying out his case of a world that he sees that is lessened violence, lessened war, lessened especially at this time, at Christmas and the New Year. But we still do have to, in the United States House and in the Senate, come up with our health care plan. And if we follow the prescription, I think that the president's given the broad outline, I think we can get there. And that's up to Congress to do. That's up to Congress to make sure that instead of worrying about we'll say 15 million people that are on Obamacare, the Affordable Care Act, we need to focus on the 120 million Americans that receive virtually no help for their health care. And every member of Congress has been put on notice. We receive subsidies, every member of Congress and anyone that works for a large company, because we get pre-tax opportunities to buy our health care. We need to extend this to the 120 million, take the Democrats off their ride that they're on, and focus us on 120 million Americans that would understand and do every day. They need help also.
Well, yeah, for the Americans that are set to potentially see their premiums go up more than 100%, this is do or die kind of stuff for them. So they're going to be watching really closely, and it's going to weigh heavily in the midterms we're expecting as well. Let's move to this. A vote by President Trump, the appointed board anyway, recently changed the Kennedy Center's name to the Trump Kennedy Center. So we've seen the construction with the letters being changed on the outside of the wall there of the building, and the president of the center is now saying that it is suing a musician for $1 million who recently backed out of a Christmas Eve concert at the venue because of the name change. So the question for you, do you think this name change was worth it now that it's affecting the money and the talent that could have been brought in for causes and community events?
The president is across the board working not only to make Washington, D.C. better, he's working to make the Kennedy Center better, and they felt like it was the right thing to do to name it after part of it, the Kennedy Trump Center. So what do I think? They had a contract. They had a contract. It was out in the free enterprise system, and I've got no problem with suing somebody for non-performance. They'd used their name. People expected them to be there, and they should have performed. You and I understand almost everything is about politics. And when you mention Donald Trump, it gets a lot of people to stand up and applaud, and gets a lot of people who also don't want to play that game. So not a surprise. I'd go look at the contract, roll the tape, and I'm sure that the contract would be worthy of them suing over.
Look, so often you hear the American people say to athletes, just play the sport, or to musicians, just play the game, or to the actors or actresses, just act in the movies. But it's almost impossible to stay out of politics these days, as divisive as it has become. Appreciate you weighing in today. Texas Republican Congressman Pete Sessions, Merry Christmas to you and your family, and Happy New Year.